I also omitted earlier on to welcome the school children to our debate on the estimates. You're very welcome. And I also want to welcome the leader of the opposition in the House, MP Emmeline Pierre, who is also with us. Thank you very much. Senator Charles, you have the floor, madam.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you for your consultation. I would like to state that it is my interpretation that my colleague on the other side said in a lot of words that youth is an area that is over-budgeted to make an excuse for the harsh blow we see in the 2025 budget. Madam President, the facts are there. We saw a 40% cut in the division of youth, a 30% slash to the division of sports. The youth of this nation are watching, Madam President. I wonder how they will respond while hearing this discussion. They will remind us very soon of this discussion. And I urge this administration to reconsider, to reallocate, and to reprioritize. Because when you cut youth funding, you do not just cut programs. You cut futures, you cut dreams, and you cut the very foundation of this country's tomorrow. Madam President,
Pausing Senator Charles. Senator Francis, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I am not standing to disrupt the honourable member for disruption's sake. But, Madam President, on a point of order, we just had a consultation where the agreement was for the statement to be retracted before proceeding. A new statement was made, but no retraction of the old statement.
Thank you, Senator Francis.
Thank you, Madam President.
Senator Charles. I think this is what we agreed to.
Thank you, Madam President. It was my understanding that we agreed to clarify the statement and to state my interpretation of the statement. That was my understanding. And this is what we agreed on.
Based on the retractment.
Madam President, it is my understanding that we agreed to reformulate, not retract. This is what was discussed. That we agreed to reformulate. In fact, the other side of the House heard the reformulation before I came back in here, and they agreed. But we agreed to reformulate. This is what we agreed to do, reformulate.
Senator Francis.
Yes, Madam President.
You were speaking. I want to hear your response to the manner in which Senator Charles has
Madam President, from the very first time I stood, I asked that the statement be retracted. The fact that we went into a private session to discuss and to consult, I would not agree for anything less. Therefore, Madam President, in the midst of the other person who were in the consultation, the agreement was yes, the statement be reformulated to reflect her interpretation, which is fine. However, the statement previously made that is being reformulated must be retracted in order for the new statement to take precedence and to have the meaning that it deserves. And that is only fair, Madam President. Because then we have two statements on the floor. And the statement before, once it's not retracted, reflects that Senator Civil Francis said that there's the Ministry of Youth budget is over budgeted for young people. And I do not wish for these sentiments to be in the airs or recorded for young people to think that this administration don't care about them.
Thank you, Senator Francis. Senator Charles. Before you speak, please approach the chair, the presidency. Senator Charles.
Madam President, thank you for your guidance on this matter. This reformulation, I am going to state, retracts what was said earlier. And this reformulation reads, I would like to clarify that it is my interpretation that my colleague on the other side said in a lot of words that youth is an area that is over-budgeted, to make an excuse for the harsh blow we see in the 2025 budget. Madam President, the facts are there. We saw a 40% cut in the Division of Youth, a 30% slash to the Division of Sports. So this is the third time I'm stating the reality, the cuts we saw in the Division of Youth and Sports. The youths of this nation, I will say it again, Madam President, they are watching. They are watching. And they will remind us very soon of this very discussion. And again, I would like to encourage this administration, or rather urge, to reconsider, to reallocate, and to reprioritize. Because when you cut youth funding, you do not just cut programs, you cut futures, you cut dreams, and you cut the very foundation of our country's tomorrow. Madam President, if you allow me, I'll proceed, and I do hope I get back the time, to housing. Madam President, every ministry, every department should be looked deep into. The problem should be extracted, and the solution should combine genuine consultations on the ground in order to yield the best outcome for our beloved country. So as it relates to housing, when I first heard this administration talking about tackling the housing deficit, I applauded the principle. After all, every Grenadian deserves a safe, affordable place to call home. But principle without performance is what? It's just propaganda. Initially, it was 500 homes per parish. Then the target was 500 Grenadian-style homes per year, which means by now, we should have more than 1,000 by now. But Madam President, let us cut through the rhetoric and look at the reality. Millions were allocated. Plans were laid. How many happy homeowners did we get from this program today? Please advise us. And now, 3 years later, the vision has shrunk. But what do we have to show for it? Madam President, under Vote 33, in 2024, 9 million was approved and 9 million was claimed to be spent. This year, another 10 million is allocated. And how many happy homeowners do we have to show for it? How many? This government speaks of the Emergency Housing Recovery Plan under the Build Back Better project. But let me ask, Madam President, how would we define emergency? What is an emergency? Is it a story I told earlier about a patient that was transferred from Carriacou? Because 9 months after Hurricane Beryl struck, families in Carriacou and Petit-Martinique, where 98% of the houses were destroyed, are still sleeping in tents, still covering their roofs with tarpaulins, still waiting for relief that was promised months ago. And while we sit in this chamber and debate, while people are suffering, My colleague Senator Cox told us in this honorable chamber on Tuesday about the reality in Carriacou and Peacemaknik, and I was very saddened by it. Just last week, visitors to Carriacou left with their hearts shrinking and sinking because the gap between the government promises and the reality is horrific, it is wide. Madam President, 147 houses at various stages. What does that even mean? We heard that in the other place. 147 houses at various stages of construction. Madam President, what does that mean? We want to know how many have been completed, how many have been handed over, and when will the next 100 plus be handed over? That is what the people want to know. Madam President, this is what you call broken promises. And then, Madam President, we heard about, they're going to address the housing shortage and they don't make idle promises. Well, what do you call this? We understand that there are challenges, and one of the challenges we heard in this house was shortage of skilled workers. So let me ask, how did you not anticipate this? What is your plan to remedy it? How does a government commit to building all these homes in the first instance without ensuring the workforce to build them? Where are the people to build them? Wasn't that something that needed to be addressed before making such a promise? And Madam President, this one I promised myself I wasn't going to go there. But let us talk about the Chinese-built apartments donated by the government and people of China for low-income families. What happened with that? What happened? Instead of ensuring that low-income Grenadians got these homes, it is my understanding that the majority of units were sold, yet they remain unoccupied. Can you imagine that? People buying houses and they're not even staying in it? So I asked, who were they sold to? Were they sold to Grenadians? Yes. And if not, why not? Madam President, the people of this country deserve reliable answers through this budget. I will repeat, they need answers through the budget. This administration must make deliverable promises. Grenadians are tired of beautiful words. They are losing hope, Madam President. They are losing faith daily. We don't need fancy press releases and lofty speeches. We need houses for our people most affected by Hurricane Beryl. I call on this administration to move on and to move from excuses to execution. Please, I beg. Move from excuses to executions. Move from broken promises to proper planning. Madam President, the people are watching, and they will not forget this. And, just to go back, were the houses, I know my friend said, yes, they were sold to Grenadians. Were they sold to Grenadians living here? I would like to know, if you have a breakdown, local, were they sold to Grenadians living here? I would like to just know that. Madam President, we see an increase in the budgetary allowance here in terms of social development, but we also see a lot of overspending in that area. But the reality on the ground paints a different picture. The SEED program. We were told that there are 7,600 beneficiaries, but under Vote 35, only 50,000 are allocated, and yet they are still handpicking who gets the benefits. Where is the compassion and empathy in caring for our elderly and vulnerable citizens? I want some clarity on some line items where there is overspending. One area is community self-help program. What is that? Because 6 million was allocated in 2024 and 8 million was spent. And now another 6 million is allocated. I seek detailed clarity on the breakdown of this expenditure. Not just a line, a statement. Detailed clarity on a proper breakdown. While we see overspending in ambiguous areas, we are seeing underspending in critical areas. Line item Hurricane Beryl response. 14.5 million allocated and only 4.9 million spent. This is just heartbreaking. Make it make sense. Make it make sense. Madam President, this is the reality. And this reality is not up for debate. It is what it is. In closing, I want to remind this chamber, on Tuesday, it was my interpretation that I heard that this administration is deeply committed to putting the people first and deeply committed to enhancing healthcare. So if this statement is true, I expect to see a thorough review and reallocation of the healthcare and other budget items in a manner that practically addresses the reality on the ground and the critical needs of our people. Those are real. The needs of our people are real. We on this side of this chamber, we are not merely critics, Madam President. We are not merely critics. We are here to do a job. We are here for the people of this country. And we stand ready to work collaboratively if the government is serious about delivering impactful results. So allow me to outline a series of concrete, actionable steps that must be done. Fully spend the allocated funds with accountability. Not at the end of the year, but monitor it quarterly. Stock up the shelves in our labs and pharmacies. Budget for the appointment of critically needed human resources in the healthcare sector. Immediately attend to the maintenance of broken equipment. Freeze the beautiful concept of having a new hospital for now and prioritize the saving of our broken healthcare system and services. Save it. Put primary healthcare as a priority through reallocation. Expedite the rollout of national health insurance with a clear and realistic timeline. Address the ballooning prices of essential healthcare items. Consider targeted VAT exemptions for essential medicines and medical supplies. As for youth and sports, the whole budget needs to be reviewed, in my humble view, to reflect the needs and aspirations of our younger population. As for housing, let us move into realistic deliverables that will respond to the housing shortages throughout the country. Give us 100 solid houses every year, and I assure you that everyone will be grateful. Address the labor force shortage, perhaps with incentives. Support the contracting community with initiatives that will enhance their outputs, both quantitatively and qualitatively. Those are striking force for any successful housing program. Get the diaspora involved in innovative housing and creative housing schemes. Madam President, our pains are many. Our pains are many. And I'm merely touching the surface of what needs to be done. We are now at a juncture where the government has exhausted its grace period. Yes, they have exhausted the grace period. We have seen 3 years go by with nothing significant to show for it. We have 9 months left in this budget year, with the government trumpeting large sums yet again. Meanwhile, the people are losing faith. The clock is ticking, and lives are at stake. Hence, I end with my plea to this administration, a plea on behalf of every Grenadian. Come back to us at the end of the year with achievements that matter most. There is no problem in phasing, in reallocation, in increasing budgets. But in my humble opinion, this budget in its current form is a recipe for non-delivery. Let us do it in unity. Thank you, Madam President. Thank you.
I thank you, Senator Charles. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I offer the floor to Senator David Andrew. Senator, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, sitting members of this honorable House, on this side and on the other side, citizens and friends of Grenada, Carriacou and Petite Martinique, here at home and in the diaspora, persons here in the chamber, and I want to particularly acknowledge our staff at the Ministry of Education, friends and well-wishers, friends, family, loved ones, supporters from St. Andrew Southeast, and our students here in the chamber with us. It's a pleasure to have you as we dissect more into the 2025 budget estimates. Madam President, it's my belief that a journey that starts with conviction is already halfway to triumph. This goes for any task we undertake. Therefore, I begin my presentation by placing on record my strong and full support to the National Budget 2025 as presented by the Honorable Leader of Government Business in this place and by the Minister for Finance in the other place. The theme, Madam President, which says, towards Vision 75, Grenada resilient and rising, is very apt. You see, the term resilient is the adjective that comes from resilience, which means, or which speaks to the ability of an entity, a person, animal, or whatever, to withstand or recover quickly from difficult conditions. And when we consider how the people of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique have been recovering and responding, even through adversities like Beryl, Ivan, 20 plus years ago, and all of these adversities, we can't help but recognize how apt the resilient team is for this budget. Madam President, I assert that a budget is an estimate, a projection of revenue and expenditure for the period, usually a year. A budget is a guide. It is never set in stone. So I listen to much of the elaboration and deliberation on the other side, going down to figures as if that's all there is to it, and forgetting the context, and forgetting much of the narrative that needs to bring clarity and to bring life to the budget and make it make sense. Madam President, so allow me to talk a little bit about the context of this budget, the context in which this budget is being presented. And so I thank my colleague, for presenting us with the context key, right? This budget, this 2025 budget, is being presented in a time when, according to the medium-term economic and fiscal strategy report, 2025 and 2027, according to that report, the real GDP has grown by 3.7% in 2024. Now, the GDP for our students is the gross domestic product. It is a monetization, or it's the monetary value of all goods and services produced within an economy for the period. And this report is indicating that it has grown by 3.7%. And that happens amidst Beryl, amidst the floods that we had, amidst the excessive rains, amidst all of the things that can ordinarily cause reduction in production. But it has grown. The context goes further and it says the real GDP is forecast to be 4.1% in 2025. So the projection looking forward is good too. The report indicates that inflation, which is a general increase in the goods, in the cost of goods and services, inflation is forecast to be low at 0.9%. You see, we have to recognize we're dealing in a situation, you live in a world where we have all this international pressure, the geopolitical tensions, the shipping routes changing, conflict over the Panama Canal, and all of these things that impact upon how we access and how we get goods and services that we depend on in this country. Yet for all, the forecast for inflation is projected to be 0.9%. In fact, the report says inflation is forecast to be low at 0.9% over the medium term. A general increase in prices and a fall in purchasing power of money is what inflation is for students, right? Let's talk about unemployment. That same report puts the context, and it says unemployment is low at 12%, forecast to go lower in 2025. In 2023, I'm reading from those documents that were presented on Tuesday. In 2023, Grenada saw a notable improvement in unemployment conditions. I'm not saying that, and it's not my perception, it's what's in the report. Unemployment fell to 11.1% at the end of the fourth quarter of 2023. Of course, the report goes on to point out that disparities between women and men continues to be an issue of concern. And it points out that 15.8% unemployment for women and 7.2% for men. Now that's something that we are duly concerned about too. And I heard the member on the other side lament that. That's okay, because we are deeply concerned about unemployment, period. And we don't support that women be less employed than men. So we hear that, but we recognize that the employment figures are dropping. But further, they talk about youth unemployment and how high the figures are. And that might be so, because youth unemployment stands somewhere at, and that's between 15 to 24. That's what's categorized as youth unemployment. I've challenged that with the Minister of Economic Development on a personal point of view, because I don't see how we can take people from 15 who are not legally entitled to work and categorize them by international definitions as being unemployed. But we have from 15, look at these young people there, they can't go to work legally, but some of their figures might be calculated inside national youth unemployment figures and being bantered around in this honorable house. That's something for us to review. But anyhow, but youth unemployment, granted that definition, is somewhere 22%. But I want us to examine the same youth unemployment figures presented in the recent census and in those same documents in 2020, before election, before we got into office. Youth unemployment was 39.5%. 39.5. In 2021, before we got into office, it was 38.6%. In 2023, a year after we got into office, it went down to 36% by June. In September, it went up to 24%. And by December of 2023, it went down to 22.8%. Now, I want us to understand, we're talking unemployment, that's the context in which this budget is set. The unemployment, the youth unemployment figures are going down, and rapidly so, after we've gotten into office, right? Madam President, allow me to speak a few things about some of the statements I heard quickly before I dissect education. I've had quite a lot of talk, and I wonder where people get their information from. It's no doubt that we had this fiasco a little bit earlier, which you managed quite well, Madam President. Because people keep saying stuff, and you can't tell where they got it from, inventing their narratives and discussing it in this honorable house. This cannot stand. You can't just invent stuff and bring it inside this honorable house and expect to try to deal with it and waste the people's time and try to confuse people and try to mislead people. A lot of that is going on, and this needs to stop in this honorable house. Madam President, I listened to the talk about this administration promising 500 homes a year and 500 homes a month, and people suggesting how many homes we should deliver in what time. I at no point heard or saw written anything about 500 homes a year, a month, or anything of that sort. Instead, I know we said that we had a Project 500 that we were going to roll out nationally. That program is currently underway. And you see, people want to give us timelines. You see, I think there is a penchant on the other side, both in this place here and on the other place, to tell people when to do what to do. Pay it now! Pay it right now! Pay it immediately! Right, so I'm hearing a certain sentiment coming from that side that tells us when to build the houses. Right? Yeah, they want to tell us when to do it. But you see, we have to remember So I heard the suggestion coming from the honorable member that if we build 100 solid homes a year, then we'll be quite fine. But in the other place, if they had built 100 homes, 100 solid homes a year for the 23 years, we would not have had a housing crisis today. Madam President, all right, so I think I'll leave the rebuttal and I want to go to some of my substantively prepared material so that I don't lose too much of my time. Madam President, as a resident of St. Andrews Southeast, as a constituent of the Eastern District, living in St. Andrews Southeast, I can't help but thank the Ministry of Social Development.
Did you say you're just starting?
That's what you consider my start, Madam President?
Pardon?
Do I need to say good morning? All right. Well, Madam President, I'll be happy to have the 10 minutes reversed so that I can get it back. Right.
No, it's wonderful. Proceed.
Madam President, as a resident of St. Andrews Southeast, I can't help but thank the Ministry of Social and Community Development, Housing, Gender Affairs, the Ministry of Mobilization, Implementation and Transformation, and the Ministry of Infrastructure for bringing joy to many of the residents of St. Andrews Southeast through several projects that I have seen as a resident in those areas. I can speak of, Madam President, the use of solar lights at the Grenville bus terminal at the entry and within the facility. I can speak of the lighting of the Longwall area in Soubise. I can speak of the recreational facility in the Soubise housing development area that the residents there have clamored for a long time and that they are now playing in the evening with using the solar lights. I can speak of the solar lighting brought to the playing field of the Crowshoe RC School, properly known as the St. Martin de Porres, where the students for the first time this year were able to end their inter-school athletics house meet, inter-house athletics meet under the lights. I can speak of the major lighting that's beginning to happen at the SAS playing field. I can speak of several other of those serious projects. Thanks to MIT, thanks to the Ministry of Social and Community Development, constituents are benefiting and their allocations in the 2024 budget have gone very well spent. But not only that, as we speak, there are several other infrastructural projects, thanks to Ministry of Infrastructure, to MIT, and to community development. The Telescope Primary School Road has commenced. For years, the residents of Telescope have been clamoring for this broken road. And Madam President, when we started to dig up that road, it was observed that several huge patches of the road had no BRC. Anyway, so that road is going on, Madam President. The Fish Market Road to Griffin Lane, that is completed. The box drain and pavement behind the SAS School, that has been completed. We can talk about the Mohon Hill Road that connects Commissioner Road to Mohon Road, that piece of road that was never done. That is being completed. I can talk about the slipper drain in Felix Park. I can talk about the slipper drain and drainage on Modest Hill in Crowshoe. I can talk about the drainage around the Mama Can playing field. The repairs at the community center in that area, I can speak of that too. I can speak of the footpath that was created in Cafe. The pavement to residences opposite the entrance of Victoria Park in Grenville. I can talk about the drainage work on Chapel Road in Grenville. I can talk about the guardrails in the Soubise and in the Crowshoe and in the area next to the school in St. Martin de Porres. The drain and retaining wall at the entrance of the Crowshoe School, and I can go on and on. But thanks to the Ministry of Infrastructure, thanks to MIT, thanks to Social and Community Development, we were able to get all of these things bringing joy to our constituents. As we speak, Madam President, I can happily report The Marquee basketball court has been repaired. We are waiting the lighting. But last evening we passed, there are guys playing because the nets are up. I can talk about the repairs to the SAS basketball court that was done too. Madam President, thanks to the Ministry of Housing, the Department of Housing, 122 approvals for homes was done. And I see some of the persons who work closely with that ministry to see that happen and take a bow. 32 of those were completely repaired. 8 full houses were done. And in addition, there's another 5 in collaboration with MIT. Special thanks to those ministries because they have collaborated to see people within the St. Andrews Southeast constituency that I'm a resident of, that electoral district, feel a lot happier. And we can talk about bathrooms and toilets and all of that. Madam President, I want to take a moment to thank the Prime Minister for his confidence in me to lead the administration of the education sector in Grenada. Madam President, many people like to quote figures, and sometimes for the wrong reasons. Today, let me quote some figures that matter. The 2025 budget allocation for this country stands at $1,912,872,014. And of that, Madam President, the Ministry of Education has been allotted a total of $183,398,180, which represents 9.6% of the total budget. Yeah, the largest share compared to any other sector. The largest share. Madam President, it is no surprise, this underscores this government's commitment to education, to the upliftment and improvement of people's lives, its human resources, through education and training. So people are talking about figures, and we talk about 8 million, and like that's the end of the budget. The largest portion of the budget was given to education, and that signals something. It signals that these young people are very important. It signals that what we do for the future of our nation is important. Madam President, this is a transformational shift. We cannot and will not, as a government, keep doing the same old thing and expect different results. You see, I hear a lot of chatter, Madam President, about where is the fly and where is the disc that was there back before and all of that. Madam President, it's as if some people have forgotten that there is a new administration with a new policy direction, having been given a different mandate, a new mandate, something different that they gave us, the people of Grenada, gave this administration a mandate to fulfill.
New lens.
New lenses, thank you. And so we don't want to go back and the same thing the people rejected and put more of that for them. But you see, some people are not living in reality. Madam President, ever since this government took office in 2022, we made up some bold decisions, understanding that there must be a drastic shift in the education sector. Some of these decisions I've already reported on: the approval of free tuition program, the introduction of TVET to primary schools, or the expansion, the introduction of coding in schools, universal secondary education. But there are others and other areas which deserve their own recognition. Digital transformation. Madam President, the Ministry of Education remains steadfast in its commitment to leveraging technology to improve the delivery of education across the nation. Over the past year, there has been numerous activities aligned to digital transformation to the benefit of our students and educators. 1, e-testing. The e-testing expansion. For the first time, Madam President, all 21 secondary schools successfully conducted online CSEC multiple choice exams in all 28 subject areas, with the exception of math and English. So it would have been 30 if we had math and English. The numbers are too huge, and based on capacity constraints, we have to look at that. Probably we can do that for next year when CXC allots a whole day to do math and a whole day to do English. But for now, all 28 other subjects have been done online through electronic means for the first time in 2024. Additionally, Madam President, 20 primary schools utilize e-testing for the Caribbean Primary Exit Assessment exams, advancing our goal of a fully digital assessment framework. Remember, e-testing at the primary level started in 2023 with a pilot of 3 schools. Yeah, the primary school students started doing their exams online in 2023, 3 schools. In 2024, we went on to add another 17 schools, and now we are budgeted to have an additional 20 schools, bringing it up to 40 by the end of 2025. That is progress. That is transformation. That is advancement. Madam President, numeracy and literacy. We have been conducting trials with 235 students and 12 teachers on 3 specialized numeracy and literacy softwares that are very interactive. Programs that we are now in the process of full procurement to enhance foundational learning, the Nearpod, IXL Learning, and WordWall. They are very interactive, student-centered, and students are exposed at their own pace to do literacy, numeracy, and this we hope can be part of the solution. Once we get through the pilot phases, we'll be able to assess, analyze, and move that into the broader education system. Expansion of coding in schools, that continues to happen. This year we launched the Restore a Sense of I Can, the RSC Tech Club, expanding coding programs from 7 to 17 schools, with an additional 4 schools to be added in the coming months. This exposes persons to virtual reality, augmented reality, and all of these drone technologies, all of these current skill sets that are required for efficiency and working in today's world. Education Management Information System. The long-anticipated EMIS went live in 9 pilot schools in November of 2024, with expansion to other schools this year. IT infrastructure enhancement. The ministry developed an IT curriculum guide for lower secondary schools, ensuring a structured approach to ICT education. Additionally, 100 computers and projectors were procured and distributed to all 21 public secondary schools as part of the ICT and digital transformation. Plans for 2025. There's going to be a smarting of several classrooms, in fact, in collaboration with the National Telecommunications Regulatory Commission, the NTRC, and the Universal Service Fund, the ministry will introduce smart classrooms featuring virtual and augmented reality tools, along with interactive smart boards in 9 schools, 2 primary and 7 secondary, starting in March of 2025. TAMCC also benefited from this gesture with the NTRC to have a hybrid telecoms upgrade to classrooms where classes can be streamed. That was done sometime at the ending of last year. Madam President, the Learning Management System, LMS, $150,000 has been budgeted this year. Following consultations, work has begun on piloting the Learning Management System as a central hub for content delivery and for learning resource accessibility to teachers and students. Madam President, for the first time, we have allocated $700,000 for the creation of a production and animation center. Now, this center would use modern technologies like drones and digital software to develop animations that enhance curriculum delivery, support ministry programs, and provide more dynamic learning experience in a step towards integrating innovation into our education system and preparing students for the future. TVET and skills development. Madam President, when we drive our cars, if there's a problem with it, we need a skilled person, a mechanic. When we have our homes and the pipes break, we need a plumber. And if we don't have the skilled people to provide those services, we'll be left behind. Technology and innovation, those things move fast. And if our people aren't trained to keep up, we too will be left behind. Already, we have taken steps to bridge this gap, Madam President. In 2024, home economics and woodwork were expanded into 24 primary schools, while an itinerant model was used for an additional 11 schools. In other words, these people with training in skills and technical education, they go to different schools where the schools cannot come to a center, but they go to those schools, benefiting over 1,883 students. Madam President, the OECS Skills and Innovation Project. This US $15 million regional initiative involving a collaboration between the government of Grenada and the government of St. Lucia and the OECS Commission, this, over the next 5 years, will see 2 institutions benefiting significantly from the funds allocated there, TAMCC and NULO. They will benefit from various initiatives, including equipment purchase, laboratory repairs and upgrade, staff training, grants for business innovation ideas, and so on. I am pleased, Madam President, on this note, to report that we launched this program last week, and we are weeks away from further implementation. Madam President, we can talk about the compulsory school age legislation. This legislation took effect on the 1st of September 2024. Reinforcing this government's commitment to ensuring that all our students, all our nation's children have access to programs which will prepare them for the workforce. We continue to put systems in place to fully operationalize, and we will provide as much support as possible for students through TVET and other interventions. So plans for 2025, as is budgeted for, to institute a skills training committee to further develop TVET pathways and monitor the progress towards planned outcomes. That is on the cards. To establish 4 centers of excellence, and that is part of our plan, Madam President, to address the shortfalls in the products of the education system and the requirements, the needs of the world of work. Those centers are being targeted: tourism and hospitality. And let me say, we've already engaged the stakeholders in the industry, the Sandals, the Chamber of Industry and Commerce, the hotel and tourism hospitality industry. All of these players, TAMCC, NULO, they've all been involved in those discussions. And a tourism and hospitality facility, agriculture, and there too we have started repairs to the Maribo Farm School, because we want that center to be a center for modern agriculture, where we can train our young persons in agriculture, and that too will help with the issue of food security. It will help in ensuring that we have younger persons coming into agriculture with modern techniques to support our self-sustainability. We also focus on marine and fisheries, and here the TMRSO Community College, the Carriacou campus, is being targeted for this facility, and we are already in consultation with the principal and the council at the college to discuss the concepts, the designs, and that's an ongoing work. We also plan to do furniture making. As we know, we already have a furniture making facility in Snell Hall that was introduced under the former administration, but the training component never took place. And we are going to ensure that we expand the capabilities in that facility to do training and to start training there. A total of $9 million, Madam President, has been allocated for those centers. Curriculum development. Madam President, last year we talked about the introduction of history, Grenadian history, in our schools. I'm still happy about that, because we have lots of students who are now having a re-energized view and perspective about history, seeing Grenadian history being taught upper primary, lower secondary, with a curriculum developed for it as well. Once again, we have retained a $500,000 allocation for this year's curriculum development budget. I listen to plenty of the noise, Madam President, but not much is being done. But we have to recognize, in many respects, we are correcting 15 or even 20 years of systemic inadequacies in pedagogy, sometimes in ancient design. We're taking slow and we are sluggish to respond to the changes, because as humans we are creatures of habit. But we are committed to doing this. Madam President, I want to take a look at the issue of mathematics. Many persons have become extremely concerned with the recent World Bank proclamation in some article about the dire nature of Caribbean education and math and English and where we positioned. Truth be told, this is not a new phenomenon. It's not something that has just come around the corner. If we go back several decades, we will see we've had several challenges. And this is nothing new. And what the World Bank is saying is not something that we don't know. And it's not something that this administration has not articulated. It is why we are realigning and repositioning skills in the education system. It is why we are refocusing and re-strategizing for math. It is why several things are being done within education to make sure that the products of the education system meet the demands of the world of work. Madam President, I just want to go back to the last 16 years. The last 16 years in Grenada, the average pass rate in CSEC math was 39.8%. For the last 16 years, the average pass rate at CSEC was 39%. In 2024, the pass rate is 31.7%, within the range. In those 16 years, so we have years like 2009, 38.1, in 2012, 32.3, in 2017, 35.6, in 2021, 34.9, in 2024, 31.7. The highest percentage over the last 16 years was 56%, 56.4% in 2014. Nothing to shout about, because we still have 44% of our persons passing even in that year, right? But the point is, Madam President, these things did not just surface. Many of these things are systemic, and we recognize that the problems didn't just start, but we know that we had to fix them, and we know we have to fix them now. So we will fix them. Yeah? There are those who spend time criticizing and finding every problem and looking at the glass half empty more than half full. So they're looking for the next problem rather than look for the next opportunity to build. But that's okay. We know why we are here. We know why we are in government and why the people have put us here. Madam President, there are those who spend time criticizing this government and not providing bus fare in addition to the free tuition. It is obvious that their vision remains as short as a lunchtime break, completely missing the bigger picture. Because if you could say the bus fare, you paid $810, which is the single biggest fee that somebody could have to pay to advance your education, and you criticize that because the bus fare is not provided. And listen, paying this fee has nothing to do with who you support, who your parents like, what political affiliation. Tutmon Bagay gets it. So I hear some talk about not politicizing. Well, this Ministry of Education doesn't politicize. When it comes to these opportunities, all Grenadians get it. And we don't select, like was read by our honorable colleague here from the documents, we don't select and wait on the minister's approval to allow you to get this or to allow you to get that. That's for everybody. In fact, students have been attempting several subjects, 15 and 16 subjects, and that's a matter the ministry is going to look at. And so I'm sounding notice that we will review the practice of doing 16 and 17 subjects. So we have so much width and no depth. We need to focus more correctly on fundamental areas and reduce the number of subjects that students do so that the SBA load becomes lower and you can focus more in-depthly on areas that matter. Madam President, here are some of the plans. Recognizing the challenges in mathematics and the performances there, the ministry will host a national math symposium. Currently, we are conducting research, analyzing all and assessing all of the math performances over the years. We have engaged one of our research officers, Dr. Martin, and he is collating the information to inform what we do, how we prepare, and then we'll go to the public, we'll go to you. We will come to persons who are retired math professors, persons who are retired math teachers, persons who have interest, persons from the diaspora, and we will begin to shape that conversation around mathematics, what we do, how we address it, because this is a national concern. It's not just for the Ministry of Education. Shaping the best practices, that is likely is going to come. So an entire math strategy is going to be prepared. You can expect that with a number of different interventions, from early intervention and interactive softwares to training of teachers to specialized teaching of mathematics at the primary level, so that only persons who have genuine competence in mathematics will teach mathematics throughout the primary school. As is, in several schools, one teacher teaches everything, and sometimes even if they don't have competency in math, they are still forced to do it, or they're still made to do it. That needs to change. It's currently being reviewed, and we will address that, hopefully, for the coming school year, including math labs, additional training, all of these things you can expect. Madam President, every primary school in Grenada will benefit from the digital OECS harmonized primary curriculum. And I've had the privilege of being briefly toured through it. I see some of my officers up there who facilitated that brief tour through it, where there is a regional OECS strategy and a regional OECS digital curriculum, harmonized primary curriculum, that is being made available to our teachers. They can access resources, they can access content, all of that. And that's currently, the implementation of this new curriculum has already begun with 12 schools across Grenada, 7 educational districts, ensuring that our students are being equipped with skills they need to succeed in an evolving world. Madam President, moreover, Grenada is one of only 4 OECS member states that was recently approved for a $10 million transformation grant, STG, from the Global Partnership for Education, a game-changing initiative in the education reform. Grenada is set to receive $2.5 million US, that's over 6.5 million EC, to support the improvements in our education system. One of the top priorities under this initiative is the successful implementation of an enhanced curriculum and assessment strategy for lower secondary. To achieve this, we intend to, 1, reduce the number of subjects offered at the Form 1s and 2, and even from the higher levels, to ensure that there's a limit, a cap on the number of students would write. Standardized curricula at this level for all public schools, ensuring consistency across the board. Introduce courses aligned with the vision of the ideal Grenadian student, including civics, life skills, and other values-based curricula. Because education is not just about exams, Madam President. It is about shaping a holistic and well-rounded, responsible Grenadian citizen. Madam President, I'm not done yet. The free tuition program will continue in 2025 with an allocation of $1.5 million. Now, I heard the voices on the other side claiming that we've cut the program funds this year. And you see, a lot of talk was done about what was cut, and what figure was reflected as less in the budget. But you see, responsible governance and prudent fiscal management begs that if you allocated $10 million for something and you realize due to efficiency or due to grants or due to savings, you are able to do it for $3 million less, do we go back and budget 10 more? No. Some people call it corruption savings. Madam President, in fact, we made more, let me make sure I get that right. Yes, we did not reduce the funds because we don't care, as some would suggest, right? In fact, we made more funds available in 2024 to ensure that we meet our commitments to citizens. But after reviewing the uptake and the spending, we recognized that there was not a need to keep the allocation. So we repurposed it. And so that there is a student reimbursement program that we have been allocated funds for, so that these students can be reimbursed either up to 50 or 100% of the fees they pay for doing CSEC subjects if they pass in a certain key set of areas, math, English included, math, English and a skill, math, English, a foreign language. There are some key areas and you will be more informed. So if you do the modern languages, if you do the agricultural science, if you do the information technology, if you do a skill, and you pass those, you will be reimbursed. Funds have been redirected for that. We want to encourage you, yes, to do mathematics, to do English and pass them, to do a skill, because that's where the world is heading. And we will outline to you what those skills are to ensure that we encourage you. And if you pass 5, including a certain number of skills and the base, you get back your full 100%, well, you get back up to 8 passes, because the ministry doesn't think there's a great need to do many more than that. But that's another conversation. Furthermore, Madam President, we heard some talking about the dropout rates in TAMCC and new law in relation to the free tuition and the non-availability of bus fare. Madam President, with your leave, I'll be happy to distribute these to members of the House so that I can deliberate and show you what the facts are. Not old talk, but what the facts are. So, give President one. And could you help me? Sure.
Is this the schedule of bus fees?
No. It has to do with the enrollment and the dropout and the retention rate at TAMCC for the last 6 years. And I want to point that out, Madam President. So with your leave, you see, because a lot of persons have been saying, and they've come in this honorable House, and have said that the free tuition is a failed policy initiative to TAMCC because more persons are withdrawing and dropping out of TAMCC than before. That is a flagrant misrepresentation of the truth. If I were on the block, I would say that, Madam President, but I know you tried me.
I missed.
But Madam President, so I look at these figures and I want to point out this document contains the enrollment and withdrawal numbers from 2019 to 2025. So 2019 to 2020, one school year, 2020 to 21, 2021 to 22, 2022 to 23, 23 to 24, and 24 to 25. And I want to just go through the enrollment figures at TAMCC for those years. In 2019 to 2020 was 1,922. In 2020 to 2021, that's before we got into office, was 1,944. In 2021 to 2022, the election year, it was 2,086. In 2022 and 2023, 1,946. In 2023 to 2024, 2,080. In 2024 to 2025, 2,170. Now, I want you to point out that the enrollment is trending upwards based on these figures. It's trending upwards consistently. But let's look at the withdrawals. The withdrawals, Madam President, for the same period in 2019, before we got into office, was 253, and that's official and unofficial withdrawals from TAMCC. 253. In 2020 to 2021 was 202. In 2021 to 2022, and by the way, that's the year the enrollment before we got into office. It was 2,086. We had the highest rate of drop-off, 513.
COVID.
No, man. 2021, 22, 513. In 2022 to 2023, it was 117. Mark that reduction. Mark that reduction, 117. In 2023 to 2024, 156. And in 2024 into 2025, 70. Now I point these figures out because I want the records to be set clear, Madam President. As far as we are concerned, the free tuition policy and our interventions at the level of TAMCC so that these young minds can get easier access to continued education is working because we see that the enrollment is increasing, the dropouts are decreasing, and the students who stay and complete, which is the third column, continues to increase from 1,669 to 2,057 in 2025. The people on the other side, in the other place, and on the other side of this house who want to perpetuate these falsehoods must stop it. The Calypsonians will say, them have to stop that. Madam President, school infrastructure. Madam President, if some had their way, they'd pretend that Hurricane Beryl was just a breeze. Yeah, a light breeze. Apparently acknowledging reality is the new norm. But Madam President, let's be serious. When a Category 4 hurricane barrels through, leaving damages in its wake, it's not an excuse. It's a reality, and that reality we had to face head on. The passage of Hurricane Beryl brought several challenges, particularly to our schools in the north of the island, Carriacou and Petit Martinique. Schools were damaged, communities were ravaged and disrupted, and families were left picking up the pieces. In the face of this adversity, the Ministry of Education, in collaboration with infrastructure and other entities, mobilized resources to secure the well-being of our teachers, students, and school. Funding was redirected, repurposed. So see, sometimes when you see a figure not the same, there's something in budgeting that you repurpose funds. We had to repurpose some funds, redirect some funds to take care of some 14 schools that were affected by Hurricane Beryl because of the priority we put on education. So, Madam President, I'll point out that a school like MacDonald College, where there was significant damage, just over $500,000 was spent. $550,000 was spent in major repairs to that school, suffering loss. Roof reconstruction, ceiling and electrical installation, refurbishment of the auditorium, tuck shop, and technical wings, right? Monies were also spent to do less major repairs at the St. Rose Grenada SDA Comprehensive School, located in Montrose. Yeah. Yes, located in Montrose. But it's Grenada SDA Comprehensive. In Carriacou and Petit Martinique, Madam President, the devastation was much worse. Schools were more extensively damaged, and in the case of Dover government, it was completely destroyed. The Ministry of Education, in response, collaborated with other ministries to ensure that as of the 30th of September, Madam President, 1 month after the due opening of school, all schools in Carriacou were able to open their doors and to accommodate students for the continuation of education. As we speak today, the post-burial repairs are about 90 to 95% complete. Not only did we do those things, Madam President, but we supplied furniture to the tune of about 48,000 new furniture for the schools, because we understood lots of them disappeared in some cases, and we understand what happens in those cases. 3 deep freezers, 5 refrigerators, 5 cookers to ensure that the feeding program was maintained. Madam President, in Carriacou and Petit Martinique, as part of the response to burial, we introduced a hot breakfast program specifically for the first term, the Michaelmas term in 2024, just to ease the strain and difficulty that some parents were facing, so that they have one thing less to worry about. Additionally, Madam President, in Carriacou alone, we worked along with 11 merchants to provide essentials for school uniform assistance and school supplies in Carriacou and Petit Martinique, totaling $210,000 in vouchers to parents on Carriacou and Petit Martinique. Madam President, education is not just about books and exams, but it's about the holistic well-being of individuals. And so there was psychosocial intervention too. We partnered with the Ministry of Social Development. We partnered with UNICEF. Our counselors from the Ministry of Education led the charge, and we met with students, in some cases teachers. We met with school communities to do the Return to Happiness program and ensure that the psychosocial well-being of the students was looked after. Madam President, not only that, we also remember the students from Carriacou and Petit Martinique who wanted to continue their TAMCC education, campus being significantly damaged on the mainland. And so they were incentivized. And so there was, through an education care package, we provided 90 students with much needed assistance. 90 students from Carriacou who continue their education on the mainland, we provided care packages totaling a budget of $2 million for that. In the initial payout, Madam President, $222,000 over that was paid. And that entails, one, the first payment was $3,700, which included $2,000 for meals and transportation, $500 for uniform, because all TAMCC students need to wear their shirts, their jerseys, and all of that. $1,200 for textbooks. And Madam President, too, a brand new laptop to facilitate their research and development of that program. This support we know will continue for the next 10 months. And that $2 million is budgeted to facilitate all that I've just talked about continuing for them.
Is this for the victims of Beryl Carrico only, or is it within across the education system?
No, that's for persons who from Carrico and Petit Martinique. It's a response to support families in Carrico and Petit Martinique who needed to send their children to have them continue their education, but to ease the pressure, we had this TAMCC care package done. So plans for 2025. Despite these setbacks, Madam President, several new schools will be constructed and existing schools will be expanded at an estimated cost of about $75 million, EC dollars. One of the first major projects on the agenda is the construction of a brand new St. David's Catholic Secondary School, which will be relocated from its current location to Malmont in St. David's. The Anglican School in Grenville, the St. Andrew's Anglican School, that has already been contracted and signed, and is due to have groundbreaking in the next few days, my anticipation is. These two schools, Madam President, are part of the Grenada Education Enhancement Project, GEEP, of the Ministry of Education, funded by the Caribbean Development Bank. Other new schools that will be treated with: the St. Giles Anglican Primary School, the in Mount Carmel, St. Andrew, beg your pardon, the Florida Government School, that's already tendered, and so that we will see action on a lot sooner. The Caliste Government, and in fact, as we speak, there are some repairs taking place to Caliste. There is the installation of air conditioning machines, units, to ensure that the dust that is prevalent in that area at that time of year doesn't affect our students and the teaching population there. Madam President, J.W. Fletcher will also undergo expansion, and there are others. Madam President, I want to pass to the Healthy Start Nutrition Program. Madam President, in 2024, this government decided to remove all fees from the Healthy Start Nutrition Program, previously called the School Feeding Program, ensuring that every child has access to a hot meal, a nutritious meal, at no cost to their families. And people are lamented about that. Initially, $3.5 million were allocated for this program. But guess what? We swiftly recognized that we needed a supplementary, Madam President. So we had to get supplemental income and to bring the expenditure on that program, to $5 million in 2024. Now that is overspending too, but I hear much talk about that on the other side. That's overspending too, but you know what that's doing? It's feeding our nation's children. Yeah? It's feeding our nation's children. Right? These funds, Madam President, cover the purchase of meat, dried goods, and the distribution of vouchers to schools, supplementing the fees that the schools would ordinarily have collected from parents or students. Madam President, now there are those who made plenty noise last year because some schools experienced some delays in receipt of vouchers, or some suppliers didn't have chicken or didn't have rice or something of the sort. Problems that we didn't have very much control over in some cases. Madam President, but you know what they say about barrels and noise. But there was a lot of noise. But I'm not here to talk about barrels or noise. But I will say this. When you expand a program, Madam President, I acknowledge the students again, and I thank them very much for gracing us with their presence. Yeah? Madam President, when you expand a program to reach 16,400 students monthly, when you expand a program to feed 16,400 in 2024, increasing it by nearly 5,000 beneficiaries. There must be some logistical issues. And some logistical issues will arise, and some people will harp on it, looking at the glass half full, and say, well, this school got something late, that one, this. But this is not inefficiency and mismanagement. That is growth. That is growth. Because when the program feeds 5,000 more beneficiaries, a lot more people benefit. So the budget for this period continues to be $5 million as we work towards increasing the program, continue to feed the numbers, but also to work in collaboration with farmers and local producers to ensure that we work with the farmers and get local produce. Madam President, regularization. Before I go to that, I want to hear an appeal to our schools. We can use our school gardens. Let's use our school gardens to supplement these programs. Let's appeal to community people, farmers, parents. Let's support the school feeding program with local produce as far as we can, because our students, our children will benefit from it. Madam President, teacher regularization. I want to report that in 2023 we began the teacher regularization process with 111 teachers in batch 1 regularized. In 2024, a batch 2 with 247 teachers, we submitted for regularization and started the regularization process, and we anticipate that within this year, that too will be completed and formalized. Further, we want to put on record, Madam President, that in 2024, we hired 148 new teachers and reappointed 506, ensuring that our students are staffed with professionals to continue pouring into the lives of our students. Madam President, for the first time, $400,000 has been allocated to the support of our professional development for teachers and even ministry staff. This investment ensures that continuous training will enhance the delivery, classroom instruction, and educational management within the sector. Madam President, I move to scholarships. This government, in 2024, awarded 217 scholarships at a whooping cost, or at a cost of a whooping $82.1 million to Grenadians. 217 scholarships to ordinary Grenadians. Even the leader of opposition business in the other place, Offspring, was on that list. That's to tell how we are impartial with the delivery of scholarships in the Ministry of Education. 217 Grenadians. Right? Of course, because they are Grenadians, and I want to point that out. Because every Grenadian who meets the criteria, regardless to their affiliation politically, geographically, socioeconomically, they would benefit, and not those who come to a particular party office, or those who go to a particular place, or know a particular minister. Thank you very much. Madam President, so we thank and these areas include fields like medicine and law, which previously, by policy under the previous administration, were not allowed to be supported by scholarship. Medicine and law. We have changed this since we've come. And so persons are able to benefit from medicine and law scholarships now. I can't help, Madam President, but talk about the first generation scholarship opportunity, which is a huge talk among many. This is an opportunity that targets persons in families where nobody has gone to a university before. And that person will be the first person in their family, the first generation, to get a scholarship opportunity. And the government, in partnership with Monroe University, will provide 100% sponsorship for studies in the areas that the college provides. To date, in February, we launched that program with already 32 scholarship awardees receiving their awards and commencing studies. The additional 18 will be given, we anticipate, by April to complete the first cohort of 50. And then in September 2025, we have an additional cohort of 50. And every year thereafter, we want to target 50 additional Grenadians, first generationals, as we move closer and closer to having a Grenadian student in every household, and university graduate in every household. Right? What's happening inside scholarship desk too? We have budgeted $120,000 in 2025 for digitization of our records to make access and finding or retrieval of our information a lot easier. Madam President, early childhood education. This is a huge one. We have allocated over $100,000 for early childhood development, but I want to say here, we recognize that early childhood development is critical for developing the education system as appropriately as it's supposed to be. Madam President, I realize my time is right on the bell. Can I beg respectfully for 15 minutes to wrap my presentation? Can I get 10 minutes, Madam President?
You have it.
Thank you. So, Madam President, that's not right. Thank you, Madam President, for your grace. So, we are keen. We are currently reviewing the early childhood education policy because we recognize that if we get it right at early childhood, if we get the correct stimulation, if we get the correct phonetic skills, if we get the correct attitudes from early, the correct values from early, we would have less fight up to do, less programs to make, less fly, and less roach, and less crocodile. Right. Madam, I know there's been significant training and the ECD policy revision, all of that's going on there. Library services. Madam President, the development of our library is now under another ministry, but the modernization of community libraries is something that we have an interest in. And so this year we allocated $350,000 to upgrade the infrastructure in those libraries. We've already started digitizing some of the equipment and doing the infrastructural development that is required to accommodate them. And so computers in 2024 have been procured for them. And we also want to do training of staff. Madam President, the multiplier grant. I am proud to announce that Grenada is receiving a co-financing boost through the Global Partnership for Education, GP, multiplier grant. It was announced during the 2024 budget reading, and finally, we have the paperwork to go with it. The entire project is worth over 13 million EC dollars, just over 5 million US dollars. With a budget of 3.1 million allocated for 2025, this funding will support Grenada's Education Enhancement Project Phase 2 across 3 key components: expanding support for students with special needs through inclusive education, strengthening early childhood education for a solid learning foundation, enhancing leadership, teaching, and school oversight for better outcomes. Madam President, I could go on and on, but appreciating the grace that you bestowed on me, I believe the message is clear. This 2025 budget, Madam President, reflects our unwavering commitment as a government to the future of education in Grenada. It is not just numbers or allocations. We are shaping the future. We are shaping the future of Grenada. We are laying foundations. And you see, a lot of times when we lay foundations, Madam President, you don't see it. So I hear people asking, where is the new project and where is it? Because we have a mindset that the only things that matter are concrete and steel and things that you probably could see physically. You know what they call that in psychology? Concrete operational thinking, which is one of the lowest levels of thought. Madam President, we are shaping the future of our children. We are empowering our educators and investing in sustainable systems that will grow. I stand here, therefore, reaffirming my support for this budget and my absolute confidence in this government's vision. But it's not just a government's effort, Madam President. It's a national effort. And I call on this honorable House and every citizen across Grenada, CARICOM, Petite Martinique, and across this country to continue investing in our nation's education for long-term growth. Before I close, Madam President, I want to take the opportunity to thank God for His goodness. See, last night I saw a post from an educator, and the post said, people in authority are treated by ordinary persons as if they have no lives They don't get tired. They don't sleep. They don't hurt. They have no emotions. But they are called upon to help 24/7, anytime, every day. And when I heard it, I'm saying, Lord, this person understands the walk that some of us in this space understand all too well. But I'm saying all this to say, within the last 2.5, almost 3 years, God has been good to me. I've not gotten sick, Madam President. Not once. I'm still clothed in my right mind. My family is still fine. I thank God for them too. So I must thank God for his goodness. Thank you for the opportunity. I want to thank my Prime Minister for the confidence he has demonstrated in me to give me the mandate to charge the affairs of education, one that I take wholeheartedly because my children are in the education system too. And I will not fail the education system. If for no other reason, my children are in it. But I have all the more reason and several other reasons not to fail it. But I thank him for his confidence, thank my colleagues. I want to especially thank my team at the Ministry of Education, a very dedicated, professional, and competent team. Yes, you could go ahead and knock the table for them. Because when I speak, when I speak as minister, I know I have the backing of my team at the Ministry of Education. And I watch how they support whatever we set out to do wholeheartedly, even sometimes under difficult circumstances, even sometimes when not everything is ideal, like when we were repairing and retiling and removing the carpet from the ministry, the way they stood when the AC units were not working, they stood and got the work done. I appreciate all of you, PSs, staff, heads of department, all of you. Your Minister of Education appreciates you, appreciates the work you do for our nation, for our nation's system. Thank you very much. Madam President, I want to thank all of our educators, our teachers, our principals. We can say a lot, but the 20-something thousand students that we have every day going to the schools, they are in the care of our principals and teachers. And while we can talk about a lot about what needs to be better and how it needs to be better, these persons take care of them every day to the best of their abilities. And I want to shout out my principals, teachers, educators, cooks, ancillary staff, all those who work to keep a clean environment within our school sector for the good of our nation's children. And to all stakeholders, both local and regional, internationally, the UNICEF and the GP and the Caribbean Development Bank and all the other agencies that we collaborate with to ensure that education goes on. Madam President, I want to thank every individual who continues to believe in the transformative power of education. Madam President, as someone who spent most of my years and all of my years working in the psychosocial field, I understand deeply the importance of holistic education that nurtures mind, body, and spirit. This vision, rooted in care for the whole person, the whole child, is what guides us as we move forward. I therefore invite all, including those who spend more of their time criticizing, to play their part in our nation's children's education. Education, like tourism, is everybody's business. There are some who say that education is what one retains after he or she forgets what was learned in school. We know too that education prepares students not for exams or a test, but for life and for living. And all of us have a part to play in that. As a government and as a Ministry of Education, we are committed, Madam President, to doing our part. It is evidenced in being allocated the hugest part of the 2025 budget estimates. This is evident, the priority that the government and the Ministry of Education is placing on education. We, as a government, we will continue to do our part. And so, it's in this context, Madam President, that I give my full and unequivocal support and endorsement to the budget statement as presented. Thank you very much.
I thank the Senator, Minister for Education. I'm a little bit excited about the decrease in the dropout rate and the You said that you have a program, I think it's an IT program that goes to the students if the students cannot come to wherever it's happening. I think that's very innovative and important. It might have an impact also on the dropout or the graduation rate in secondary schools or whatever level at which you attain. So I hope some of these successes can be repeated in and under the 2025 budget, and that you will pay attention to what you did not accomplish in 2024 as well. Those are my little commentaries. May I propose, dear colleagues, that we break for lunch. We failed to get to where we wanted to be at the end of the morning. And before I talk about that, I think she has stepped out of the room, but I want to thank Senator Charles for her retraction and her continuation. Please convey that to her, Senator Cox. And I thank Senator Francis for her participation in our consultation with dignity and grace, and for her start of the props this morning. Thank you for bringing keys and glasses, and we're not sure what we're going to see after lunch. When we resume after lunch, because we have missed someone in the morning, Senator Joseph, if you are willing to accept this, we will have to start with Senator Andre Lewis, if that would work, but you have lunch to renegotiate. But when I come, start up at 2, you will, yes? Senator Dwight Horsford, you on the floor, sir?
Thank you, Madam President. I already indicated to my friends opposite and my colleague to my left that I prefer, after the luncheon period, to go.
I would like you to use your voice to match your size. I couldn't hear you.
No, I was saying that I indicated to my friend opposite and to my distinguished friend on my left that after the luncheon period, I would prefer to go rather than Senator Lewis.
I see. All right, thank you. We will have you first. Enjoy lunch, everyone. Thank you to the, I cannot dismiss for lunch without saying how excited this Parliament is to hear the results of the collaboration in the ministry. Hope I'm speaking as an observer. And really to thank you for coming this morning. Thank you all very much. Delighted. Thank you.